okay, as I go through explaining paranoid schizophrenia and antisocial personalities, some of you will sit here and go, I think that's me. Okay? No, that's not you. All I'm giving you is just a small little section of these people. In order to be diagnosed, it's much, much more involved that's there. As I go through this, what I want to do is I'm going to talk about these different disorders. I'm going to try to come up with movies and movie characters to show you how movies have depicted these people. If you can come up with some as well, I'd love to hear it. Either tell me in class or email it to me. But the first thing we want to do is talk about psychological disorders. And what I say is know the positives of your weaknesses and the negatives of your strengths. What we're talking about, that's that temperance and that's that balance in your personality. People who go to extremes, okay, sometimes begin to have issues. Depression, anxiety, as you start going to those extremes. Obsessive compulsiveness, and on and on. So the first thing we want to talk about is be able to define psychological disorders. This chapter used to be called abnormal psychology. Okay? It used to be called abnormal psychology. And as we sit and we look at this, we ask ourselves, well, how come some people have issues and some people don't? Okay? And you've come across people. Sometimes you say, God, that guy is crazy. She's nuts. Stay away from her. Okay? We've all said that about people. Okay? So what makes someone dysfunctional or functional? In this case, how does society determine who's normal and who's abnormal? By the way, before the 1980s, you could be put in a psychiatric hospital pretty easily. Okay? Just by acting out, or one of your relatives said, little strange, you can get in pretty quickly. Now it's very, very difficult to get somebody committed nowadays. Very difficult. You have to either be physically threatening somebody's life or physically threatening your own life. And it has to be pretty darn explicit, which I don't think is so good, because some people, we do need to get them care much quicker than we do. But we used to talk about statistical normality. And what is statistical normality? Whatever the majority of people are doing is normal. So that is called the bell-shaped curve. And it's a statistic that basically says people who fall within the bell make up 68% of whatever behaviors we may be measuring. 68% of the people. If you fall in the 68%, you're normal statistically. Statistically. If you go over here, this would be one, get this word, deviation above the norm. The norm's going to be right here. You then would be classified as abnormal. One standard deviation below the norm, you would be what? Abnormal. So if we said something like, if you've been married for 15 years, and how many times a week would you be having sex? Now don't write this down, because I don't know if this is the exact answer or not, but I'm close to it. Let's say it's 1.2 times. Okay, 1.2 times. That's going to be the norm, which is right here. So it would be 1.3, 1.4, and so on. If you're having sex, let's say, 3 times a week, and you're married 15 times, you fall over here. You are one standard deviation above the norm. Do you understand where the word comes from? Deviate. Okay? We could call you a statistical deviate, because you're having sex 3 times a week. Okay? Is that healthy? Dysfunctional? What is it? It has nothing to do with that. Right? What it has to do with is whether you and your partner really want to do this 3 times a week. And if you both did, good for you. But in terms of statistic normality, you're a deviant. 0 times a week. You're over here. Okay? Now you and your spouse both want, we don't want to anymore. Okay? That's fine. Does that make you unhealthy? No. Statistically, though, it does. So a lot of times when we all look at the general population, sometimes we say that person is weird, they're unhealthy, because they're not like everybody else. We do that a lot. You're not like everybody else, therefore there's something wrong with you. Statistically, no, that has nothing to do with it. And psychologists don't use this. If we go back, we also see that society sometimes says people who have issues or have problems or are abnormal are social nonconformists. They dress differently, they act differently. Most of you people sitting in here right now look like college students, all right? You have college students dress. Some of you have metal bits on your face, but not a lot, okay? Most of you have normal colored hair and everything, okay? But sometimes if someone walks into class and they have some crazy outfit on, and they have purple, red, and pink hair, and they have about 14 different pieces of metal, and they do this, okay, and they open their mouth, and they have about 20 tongue studs on there, you're going to go, oh, you're kind of weird, aren't you? Okay? They're what? Social nonconformists. Are they psychologically unhealthy? No, there's no background for that. They just dress differently. But as a culture, sometimes when people do things differently than others, kind of similar to statistical normality, we have a tendency to say there's something weird about them. Or it depends upon the situation. If some of you walked in here today, you guys with a Speedo bathing suit on, or you girls with a bikini on, we'd look at you, right? You do that, but then you would also, okay, go, oh, they're weird. What's with them? Doesn't fit the situation. Or how about this one? If you came in, women, with a skirt on, or a dress, or you guys with a suit on, most of you would look at you and go, what is your deal? You have a job interview or something? What's the deal there? Is there something wrong with you? Social context, situational context. Funerals. Oh, you better know the culture before you go to a funeral. Right? Some funerals are what? Somber affairs where you dress in dark clothes and everybody says, I'm so sorry for your loss, so sorry for your loss, and people cry and are upset. Some of them are what? A celebration of life. Okay? So you get that mixed up. Okay? The culture you're going to, it's a somber affair, but you show up in your red shirt, okay, and your trumpet and a bottle of Jack Daniels, and you bust into the door playing your trumpet going, yeah, who wants a drink? They will probably tackle you, call the police, okay, and have you arrested for being what? A little imbalanced. No, you're not. It's just the situation was different. So in psychology, sometimes we can't just look at the general population and say, declare them this way. So we don't use this terminology. What we talk about is disordered behavior. Give me something solid to go on, something I can do research with, something I can show statistics with. I just can't look around in this classroom and point to people and go, antisocial, paranoid schizophrenic. You can't do that. It has to be done with thorough investigation and research. So the core features of disordered behavior are one, maladaptive behavior. Behavior that makes it difficult to adapt to the environment and meet the demands of day-to-day life. You just can't get along in life. You can't work, you can't go to school, you can't maintain a relationship. You're maladaptive. You can't function. It's not just one day or one weekend or 1 week. It's longer than that. Or the big one is number 2, where this person loses their ability to control their thoughts and actions. They're completely off into another world. They're talking to imaginary people. They can't control what they're saying or doing. All right? Losing their ability to control thoughts and actions. Maladaptive behavior, and the second part that's there. Those are the core features of disordered behavior. And I see that a lot of you still writing before I go on to the second one. But in psychology and in what's called the helping professions, they have a book, again, it's about this thick, called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. And the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, I'll show you an overhead on that one in a second, is a book where a psychologist can go to and look up traits. Before I can diagnose somebody, I have to go to this book and I have to first interview you, maybe give you about your psychological tests that are there. Then in the book says, if you say that this person has a generalized anxiety disorder, they have to show 6 to 8 of these traits for a specific amount of time, 3 months. Then, if you get 6 out of 8, then you go to, it's called a tree, you go to another branch and it says, and now they have to show 3 to 5 of these traits for this amount of time, and then boom, I go to another tree. I can't just sit around, okay, and call you these different things. It has to be diagnosed based on research. And the research was done, okay, with thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who've already been diagnosed, and then you compare the two. All right? So I'm running out of time here. So the diagnostic, and I'll show you that when we come back, and the spelling of all of that. I'm going to show you what's called the DSM-4 revised edition. This summer, the psychiatrists came out with what's called the DSM-5. It's the brand new edition of it. I'm not going to cover that. It is a little bit different, though. Okay? So I said I was stopping, didn't I? You all listen well. You've trained me well. Skinner would be proud of you. As you move along, I stop.